Hello and welcome to my shop. Today's video is about the bandsaw jigs that I use for wood turning. The first is a circle cutting jig, which I use for bowl blanks, and the second is a log sled, which I use to hold odd shaped and unstable pieces. So let's jump in. My circle cutting jig follows a very common design. It's just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's approximately as big as the bandsaw table, with a center pivot point that rests in a movable arm. And the movable arm is locked into place by the underside with a thumb screw. And then to prevent the center of the circle from going past the bandsaw blade, there's a little stop over here. So you start in this position and then go to there. So on the underside, the plywood is held together by two pieces. The first is an Incra miter slot bar, and the second is just a scrap of hardwood. And here's the thumb screw that locks the bar into place. And that thumb screw goes into a quarter 20 T-nut down in here, but any sort of threaded insert would work fine for that. Now I do have a piece of advice for designing these things. And that is to make sure that your plywood extends to the left of the blade. As you can probably see by the two different colors of plywood, my jig started out only going to here. It was just on this side of the blade. And that design proved to be pretty deficient because as I was turning an oddly shaped and uneven bowl blank around here, if there was a protrusion on the bottom of the bowl blank, as it was coming back around over this empty space, it would catch over here on this edge, forcing me to tilt and wiggle the whole bowl blank to get it up over that ledge, and it would just wreak havoc with the blade. It would twist it and everything. So all I did, I just butt jointed another piece of plywood on here, and I used a couple of viscous to keep the top flush. So definitely keep your jig nice and wide. So here's a piece of birch, which I will cut a bowl blank out of. So the first thing we do is find the center. And I've got a nice piece of flame grain here. There's a crotch here, one branch going this way and the main trunk going this way. So I'd like to capture some of this stuff, but maybe avoiding this bark inclusion. So I take my big size dividers and I find a nice center for my bowl. That's pretty good. And I'll note that when you're using the dividers and popping the hole in for the center point, always work on the top surface of the bowl. That way the hole that you put in for the center point, as well as any holes you put in for your faceplate or for your woodworm screw, will go down into that waste material. Alright, so back in the bandsaw, all I need to do is to use my dividers with that setting that I just determined to figure out or to set the center point. And you notice I don't need to draw a circle on the bowl because this will determine the exact path of the blade. So now I just have to grab my blank and then put this pin to the hole that I just drilled in. This is about the hardest part about using this jig, is getting that little hole into place. That's all she wrote. So now I have a nice circle with a hole that I can use to position my woodworm screw or my faceplate right to turn at a pretty darn fast speed on the lathe. You'll see a lot of discussion online and in the woodworking community about how to shape your bowl blanks. Some people prefer to just rough cut them with a chainsaw or with a handsaw and to knock off the corners on the lathe, whereas I prefer to start with something that's nicely round. I prefer this approach because it doesn't take a lot of time to use the bandsaw jig and to cut a round blank, and I can start at a much higher RPM on the lathe and just work more quickly hogging out all this material. With an odd shaped bowl, one with like, it's basically like a misshapen octagon if you're just going with the chainsaw, there's going to be a lot of vibration. And you'll be forced to start your turning at a lower speed. So consequently, the whole process for me anyway just took a lot longer time. So that's why I prefer to use the bandsaw for the bowl blanks. So here's my log sled. I use this guy a lot less often than I use my circle heading jig, but when I do need it, it comes in handy. It's super simple. It's just a doubled up piece of plywood, 3/4 inch each, with another Incra miter slot bar on the bottom, and on the top I have an Incra piece of T-track, and then I have a fixed foot and then a movable foot. And as you can see, these guys serve to pinch together whatever crazy shaped piece of material you have in here. If you have something that is round, that rocks a lot, that you just can't safely maneuver through the blade, this is the jig to use. And as you can see, I have a grid of holes here with a sort of a spike that goes into place. This was a nice idea, but I really don't use it all that much. I find that just having a flat platform and then like just this simple clamp to hold a piece of wood in place gets the job done most of the time. So I use this guy if I'm roughing out logs and I want to make some spindle blanks out of the weird offcuts. I'll use this guy to get a flat face or two on the blank, and then I'll just use the fence or my miter gauge in the bandsaw to cut the rest. So this is really just taking a weird crazy shaped piece of wood and putting flat surfaces on it so that you can safely use your traditional tools. So I'm not going to do any spindle blanks, but I will take this other chunk of birch and let's cut off this weird piece over here, just so you can see how this guy works. So it's pretty simple. So let's pretend. Wait, actually, let's take a crosscut. Let's pretend that this blank is all checked and dried and stuff, and I want to slice off an inch or two. So I'm just going to pop it over here, and then I'll take this piece and simply just push it against the fixed and tighten her in. So that holds. That's pretty stable. It's not the best, but keep in mind you're going to have your hand on here too to hold it into place. There we go. So that was a quick and safe way to take this cut. Just picture yourself trying to do this by hand. You wouldn't have a flat surface here, and furthermore, you'd just be kind of, just trying to maneuver this with your soft little fingers. So, log sled is a great way to safely cut up weird shaped pieces of wood. I hope this video was useful to you, so please leave any questions or comments down below. And thanks for watching.